So good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, come on, no, Ocoee, let's do it. I know we in masks, but let's project through those masks. Let's try that one more time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
That's a good Ocoee welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Ali Braswell, and I have the pleasure and privilege of acting as your master of ceremonies over the next few days as we embark upon an educational symposium. As we begin to commemorate and memorialize those who stood for voters' rights some 100 years ago. So it is a pleasure and a privilege to have been along this journey to watch this take place with our leadership of both our Human Relations Diversity Board, our City Council, and the citizens of Ocoee. To call our session to order, would you please join me in welcome Mr. William F. Maxwell, the Chairman of the Human Relations Diversity Board.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. This is truly a very historical event. Enjoy, open your minds, your hearts, and let this be the beginning of a new era in the life of our city and our community and citizenry. At this moment, I'd like you to join us as we present the national colors. Sergeant of the Guard, present the colors, please.
Broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streamed, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please join me in thanking Nick Warner for that great representation of our national anthem. As this is a formal proceeding, but let us go ahead and rejoice in the time that we gather. I mean, it's on a Sunday. We got pastors in the house. So y'all turn around and put a holy fist bump in the air out of recognition of who is sovereign here. At this time, we'd like to welcome Ms. Lori Hart, a member of the Human Relations Diversity Board, to do our formal welcome.
Behold how good and pleasant it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity. Psalms 133, verse 1. Good afternoon. My name is Lori Hart, and I'm a member of the Human Relations Diversity Board of the City of Ocoee. As I stand before you today, I am reminded of words of Representative John Lewis. He says, if you are not hopeful and optimistic, then you just give up. You have to take the long, hard look and just believe that if you are consistent, you will succeed. After 2.5 years of planning, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you here to the City of Ocoee's A Day of Remembrance. This week, as a community, we will acknowledge our past as we work together to a better future. It is today that we make known to this community, Orange County, the state of Florida, the nation, to everyone who desires to hear that Ocoee shall no longer be known as the Sundown City, but the Sunrise City, with the bright light of harmony, justice, and prosperity shining upon all citizens. As we continue to move forward as a community, it's important that we embrace each other's differences and work together. As it is written in Colossians 3:14, beyond all of these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity. So thank you for coming this afternoon, and we welcome you to take a little time and to join us for additional events throughout the week. May God bless you.
Thank you, Ms. Hart, for the welcome. And before we move to the prayer, I think it'd be appropriate. It's not in my program, so I'm departing. So if you're looking at the script there, the stage manager, I'm departing. I'm leaving at this moment. I'll be back. But we have our elected officials here. With our mayor and our commissioners, please stand and be recognized for being here this afternoon. If y'all don't know what that was, we have to thank the money in the room. There's funds went to put this together, but you know their hearts have been in this as well. Our commissioners, our mayors, and our mayor, and our Hrdb, our Human Relations Diversity Board. Would you please stand? So let us get back to the program, and I promise, Madam Stage Manager, I will stay on script till I depart again. All right. At this time, I'd like to welcome Pastor Ross Middleton to share with us a prayer.
Let's bow our heads. Father, we come before you here this afternoon. God, oh God, we count it an honor to be here and to play an integral part in the racial reconciliation of our community and our region. 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says to give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. So despite the horrific events that happened that brought us here today, God, we are thankful for the opportunity that we have as a people, as residents, as citizens of this community, to bring healing and to bring hope to this area. God, we come this week before you, God, and we dedicate all the events of this week to you, God. Every day, God, every speaker, God, every song that is sung, we come and we dedicate this week to you because you are a God who loves justice and whose throne is built on righteousness and justice. As we begin to hear the story of what happened 100 years ago this afternoon, God, I pray that our hearts would not just be moved with emotion, God, that gives us a feeling for a few moments. God, I pray that they would be moved with compassion, which then moves us to action. And so, God, I pray that as we hear these things and we hear the things that our brothers and sisters went through at the hands of some wicked people, God, I pray that it would give us a compassion, God, a hope, and a dedication to bring agents of reconciliation in this community. We ask for your healing power to be here over this week and over all these events. To your name we pray, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Middleton. So we've set the occasion, we've welcomed our visitors, and we've prayed for God's grace. At this time, I'd like to extend an invitation to any visiting descendants of the members of this community that lost their lives over 100 years ago to please come forward at this time if you'd like to make a comment.
Good evening. Yeah, I think I speak loud enough that I don't need this, but good evening. Yes, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and let us be glad in it. I am just so elated that on this day, that the City of Ocoee, the mayor and the commissioners, and all of you, community, to acknowledge what has happened over 100 years ago. I am Sharon Cooley McWhite. I am a descendant of Julius July Perry, and on behalf of the Perry family, I extend a thank you to each and every one of you. As we continue to move forward, we can do this. We can bridge this gap. We're the ones that's going to make the difference in this community and the community at large. So I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. And again, on behalf of all the Perrys, and it's a lot of Perrys. We just don't stop with Julius July. We have some Perrys that are named Julius Caesar, Julius Edward, Julius July. So you see, Ocoee, there are still some that you don't know. But in the next coming months, you will hear from the Perry family. We've suffered in silence for a very long time. This has been a hurtful part of our past that, yes, we've talked about it, but we've dealt with it. Death, grief is something that is not at every conversation table. But we recognize it, and we thank you, Ocoee, for acknowledging and the acceptance of not only what happened to Julius July Perry, but so many others lost their lives, their land, their family. We're talking about somebody's child. So each and every day, let's not forget. Even though it's been 100 years ago, it still remains today. So that's why it's really important that we come together as a unit, because we're going to be a part of this change. And the change will start today, because I am here, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm not a resident of the city of Ocoee, but you know how to reach me. And please don't hesitate. Anything that I can do to help bridge this gap, you let me know, Mayor. I stand with you, and I stand for you. Thank you.
That was well said. Are there any other descendants? And I pity who comes next, because that's one going to be hard to follow. But seriously, do we have any other descendants? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth Thompson. I'm a descendant of the Carmichael family, the place where we're looking expectantly to occupy soon. You're building a nice edifice there. That was supposedly our homeland. We were robbed, stolen, our heritage and our inheritance. But I'm a forerunner. After 22 years in the service, senior, enlisted, I chose, after traveling 5 continents, 15 countries, I'm a resident of Ocoee, Florida. Well, I heard the scripture says, he told us, we're not armed. We're not armed with these physical armaments, but with the spiritual armament, covered by the blood of Jesus Christ. We choose to come here for a reason, to be a support. My neighbor is your commissioner, Commissioner Brinson. Come on, give a hand to that man. And my friend Oliver, and also to the Bracey family. They're credible people doing astronomical things to bridge, she said it, well, more outspoken than I can, to bridge that gap. This is reconciliation by being a part of this legacy, living legacy. Thank you so very much, and God bless you. Mayor, thank you. Mayor, thank you. Mayor, thank you.
So, Mr. Thompson, you shared that you served 22 plus years. In what branch of our service?
It was the U.S. Army.
Who? Okay, so now we have to do the roll call real quick. So I am departing. So we have the Army. Do we have the Air Force? Thank you for your service. Navy. Thank you for your service. United States Marines. Hoorah! Hoorah! That's what I'm saying. I have a bipolar disorder. I currently serve the Army, but I was a Marine first, and will always be. We know that. Commissioner Brinson will not let me leave this stage if I don't put that in. But let me go back again, once again. Are there any other descendants that would like to come forward at this time and share? Last call. Well, here we go. Yes, sir. Sorry.
I really consider this. My name is Ken Wilson. I'm a resident of Ocoee, but I'm also a resident of Orange County all my life, with the exception of time I spent in the Marine Corps, as a Vietnam veteran and a 35-year of faithful service as a law enforcement officer in this county. To the Perry family, to Ms. McWhite, I'm saying thank y'all for coming forward, because I've lived here. I haven't gone anywhere. I've been right here. My grandmother, the late Miss Sally Crumley, would not let you talk about Ocoee. That's something that in the government project areas of Orlando, where a lot of the blacks migrated to, Black Bottom, Griffin Park, all of those project areas, because we could no longer come to Ocoee. And for years, blacks were not allowed to live in Ocoee. I lived through that. And I'm very thankful. You couldn't purchase a house here because they burned it down if you were black. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Because this history, they would not put in the textbooks at Ocoee High School, Boone High School, Edgewater High School, or any high school in Orange County. They didn't want you to talk about the Ocoee Massacre. I had to keep my mouth shut. As a young kid, I traveled Highway 50. I may say something that's going to offend some of you, but it's history. When they used to have a sign on Highway 50 that said, "Nigger, don't let the sun go down on you in Ocoee." So, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thank you for having this ugly event that we can talk about it, we can remember it, and the July Perry family can finally get their due recognition, because this is history for Ocoee. I'm going to say this and then I'm going to sit down. I lived in Orange County my whole entire life. My wife came out here and she saw a nice house here in Ocoee, and she came back and she said, "Honey, I found this really nice home, and I'd like to move there." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, where is it?" She said, "It's in Ocoee." I said, No. My grandmama said, "You don't live in Ocoee. You don't go nowhere near Ocoee." But thanks to God, Mr. Mayor, I am a resident of Ocoee. I've enjoyed my time here, and I'm saying to everyone that put this together, I'm saying it's about time, and congratulations.
Thank you, sir. And as a kid that was born in Seminole County and grew up in Oviedo, my daddy used to drive oranges to Mascot. You know, this was a section of town on 50 that when we came through, I was told to lay low in the cabin. And then we would continue on. So I will celebrate 59 years, but that story was told. So this is history, not his story. So we are telling history and commemorating, and I know this next section will really bring about the understanding, the knowledge, and the information, so that no longer will we bring up the Ocoee Election Day Massacre and people not know, but they will also know about the reconciliation that's been led by all of the people who have been called in this room. To the Perry family, thank you for sharing. Looking forward to what else is coming. But now to tell the story. The Ocoee Story is going to be a historic presentation. Will be told by William Maxwell, who's a retired major from the United States Army. Will be told by Dr. Kathleen Crown, who's a past chair of the Human Relations Diversity Board, and the immediate past chair. Or maybe I got that in backwards order. Nicole Dawkins. The key thing is leadership that I traveled with when we went to Alabama. And we happened to be in a vehicle and rode past a sign that said, "This is the highway. This is the road that was trucked." And with Bill Maxwell in the back, being Bill Maxwell, saying that, I'm a little boy from Selma, Alabama. I ain't never had a white man drive me nowhere. And with our crazy mayor up front, saying, "Well, sit back there, be quiet, we're going." We embarked upon a journey from Montgomery, Alabama to Selma, Alabama. And somewhere along the way, hearts changed. We went from putting an issue to bed to memorializing July Perry. We went from not talking about it to being about it, to a proclamation that was passed by this commission. And now to tell that story, please welcome our three past chairs, Mr. Maxwell, Dr. Crown, and Ms. Dawkins to the stage.
There I am. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're all here. This is wonderful. And I'm going to hopefully open some eyes and answer a lot of questions and let you understand for the years of research that I have done to get to the bottom of what I think is what actually happened. Ocoee, 1920. Okay, prior to 1920, in the 1850s, Dr. J.D. Stark led a group of malaria-stricken slaves to the area, soon to be designated as Ocoee. What had happened was when they first came down, they settled in an area near here, but not as close to Stark Lake as it would become because of the mosquitoes. And that was one of the reasons why Orange County was called Mosquito County, because these poor people were inundated by mosquitoes. But they settled in, started making the area. Then we had the Civil War. A lot of Confederate soldiers came to this area, okay, liked the area. And it really didn't have a name, but then Captain Sims decided to call it Ocoee, all right? And Ocoee is Cherokee for apricot vine place. And you see sometimes the pictures around town, looks like a flower. That's supposed to mimic an apricot vine. Okay, Bluford Sims, another name we hear quite a bit about around town, began working with wild oranges, and he was the first to really cultivate oranges into becoming a commercial nursery where they were actually edible that you would want to eat and drink. And then the Florida Midland Railroad, was constructed in the 1880s, which really spurred a lot of future growth, because if the railroad came through, folks would be able to get here, and they came. All right. Now we're getting close to the 1920 Voting Massacre. At the time before the 1920 election, a lot of things were going on. First, we had Warren Harding was running as the Republican candidate, and James Cox was running as the Democratic candidate. And what you have to remember is at that time, Republicans and Democrats were pretty much flipped. So Republicans were more liberal, Democrats were more conservative. And that didn't change till roundabouts Kennedy in the 60s. So people were really upset with the current president, President Wilson. President Wilson, after World War I, was part of numerous treaties, the Treaty of Versailles, which was never passed by the Senate, even though they tried twice. Now, the folks that were in the Senate and a lot of the people that lived in the United States at that time were very nationalistic. They didn't want anything to do with globalism. They wanted to make sure that it was just about the United States. And that became a problem. So that's why the Democratic Party decided to ex-President Wilson, even though there were no term limits at the time, and go with James Cox, and that's how it moved forward. So Orange County was historically Democratic. It was very much a white supremacist area, period. First year female voting, 1920 was a big deal. Suffrage had come through. They had signed the paperwork the year before and finally going to get to vote. Also, players in what was coming on was July Perry and Most Norman. They were labor contractors. They owned large tracts of land, along with Mr. Hightower, and the three of them had come down from, I believe, South Carolina at the same time, and became very successful. So, we're getting closer to the vote and to Election Day, and the KKK had pretty much disbanded in 1871. And they had said that I read that they disbanded because there were changes and conditions and martial law had taken over. So since martial law had taken over, they had decided that the invisible empire no longer needed to exist. So the KKK was really quiet until just before the election. Then all of a sudden they decided to create Swamp Fire number 3. And that was basically going to be the new Klan. And they were going to be the savior of oppressed people, because the folks in the Klan were saying that the white people were not being able to enjoy their level of white supremacy, and therefore they were being oppressed. Okay, so KKK resigns itself, aggressive defender of 100% Americanism. That's nationalism, the opposite of globalism. And then on October 30th, a couple days before the election, there were 2 silent KKK marches, one in Orlando and one in Winter Garden. And allegedly there were upwards of 500 Klan members in these marches, and they didn't say a word. And a lot of the newspaper reports I read said that people said, well, we didn't know why they were here, but they just gave a sense of power just to see hundreds of people in white robes and white hoods walking down the street saying nothing. And it was all about black voter intimidation. Okay, now we get to voting day. Now, a bunch of folks did get to vote in the morning of November 2nd. July Perry and his wife were 2 of them. But what had happened was at noontime, some of the folks decided that too many black folks were voting. So they had a change of guard at the polling station. And then they went out and they told R.C. Bigelow, who was the notary public, to go fishing. So off he goes fishing on a fishing trip, so he's not there to accept any dollar poll taxes. So if somebody hadn't paid their poll tax or had erroneously been charged with not paying their poll tax, even if they did, he wasn't there to rectify it. So that's what happened with Most Norman. Okay, so Perry and Norman, Perry supposedly paid his poll tax and Norman supposedly did not pay his poll tax. So he goes to vote and they basically shoo him off. So he goes then to see Judge Cheney. Now Judge Cheney was running for, I believe, a Senate position, and he was Cheney was very active in getting black folks registered and getting them to vote. So so Norman goes over to see Judge Cheney. He goes, they're not letting me vote. He goes, I want you to go back. I want you to get their names. I want you to say, you know, I have the right to vote. I have had the right to vote. You have to let me vote. So he goes back, and that didn't go very well. So they noticed that there was a weapon in the back of his car. They melee ensued with that, and he ended up getting pistol whipped and chased away from the polls. So then Most Norman went to a friend's house who bandaged him up the best he could and sent him over to July Perry's house. So July has his friend come in, and they start hanging out, just trying to figure out what their next thought process will be. Now the word started spreading. So what had been created were big billboards outside of Orlando that were originally designed to show election results. But instead they put up, things are not going well in Ocoee, there's a black uprising. Everybody needs to come and help. Well, all the guns in the neighborhood hardware stores sold out. So basically we've armed people that probably should not have been armed. But so that had happened, and then we're getting into the early evening. And Burley Jones was an ex-slave. And Burley Jones really was an instigator in this whole thing, because he went to a bunch of the white folks that were in charge in political different aspects, and he said that black folks are at July Perry's house and they're stirring things up. So that got people a little upset. So another warning went out saying, oh, the black folks are uprising in Ocoee, we need help. Okay, so then Colonel Sam Salisbury leads a contingency to July Perry's house. And we've heard a lot of different things about that, but pretty much what I have found is that July opened the door and noticed there were people around. Supposedly the only people in the house were July's family itself, because Most Norman allegedly had slipped out through the trap door underneath and he was gone. And July opens the door, we've all read the commentary about it, and a shootout occurs. And basically at that point, July's arm is pretty much blown off. He's in really rough shape at this point. And 2 of the white folks that were there were killed in the melee because they allegedly tried to get in the back door and they were shot. And then went forward, and then they dragged July Perry off, and then the other folks decide, well, you know, we've got to fix this. So they start it just becomes a melee, a huge melee. They take July Perry away. They take him downtown to go to jail. And then they decide that this is beyond any control. So now we've got Sheriff Frank Gordon called in from the county, okay, because he's Orange County Sheriff at that point. Then it becomes even more widespread for the news of the riot. It goes statewide. So now we've got all these folks coming in from all over Florida, and every white man in Ocoee was deputized. Yep. Now we've got 11 p.m. Oh, I'm sorry. Before they took July Perry to jail, he had snuck out in the back and hidden in the cane brake. And he had a little puppy. And the puppy loved his daddy. And the puppy got out, and the puppy found July Perry in the cane brake. And that's how he got caught. And that's when they grabbed him, and they dragged him, and they took him to jail. Allegedly, he did get some medical attention at that point. So, but folks say in a lot of things that I read, they said, well, he was about dead anyway. Well, he wasn't dead yet. Next, please. Okay. Now it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Ocoee is filled with militant, anti-black violent outsiders, and it was, well, we got a problem, we're going to burn everybody out. And that's what they did. The rapid spread of fire. There were 25 houses, 2 churches, 2 schools, and a fraternal lodge. We don't know how many people, how many black folks were killed, how many folks died. It just was, I've read so many horrific stories that people were burned to death. People were tied up, got stuck in barbed wire and couldn't escape. People were shot trying to leave their homes. It was an awful, awful, awful event. Now, the white-owned properties, they were not burned. It was just all the black properties. Okay. Now, we go back to the jail, 3:30 in the morning. July Perry's in the jail, and there was the jail guard there, and it's not known, I can't tell for sure if the jail guard, who was probably in on it, if he let them in to get July Perry or if he was overpowered. But either way, they got July Perry, okay? They dragged him out. They allegedly dragged him behind a vehicle. They lynched him, and then they riddled his body with bullets. And they did this all in front of Judge Cheney's house, okay? The judge that told him, yes, you can vote, all right? And what they did after they killed July Perry, they put a note on him. And it said, this is what we do to N-words that try to vote. And they left it there. Okay, the aftermath. So basically, the North Quarters have been burned to the ground. There's not much left of the northern area that we know as Ocoee. Mob stayed in Ocoee for quite a while, a few more days. There was a false alarm in Winter Garden on November 5th, where everybody thought something was going on, the bells were ringing, it became a mess, and they were all ready to come to Ocoee because everything's going to burn down again. Well, that got calmed down. The souvenir hunters. This is probably the worst thing about it. I have read that we will never know for sure how many victims there were because a lot of the KKK members took skulls as souvenirs. It's really hard to count bodies when you're looking for femurs. Yep, that's your upper leg bone. Skulls are pretty much what you look for when you're looking for victims. We'll never know. So that was pretty horrific as souvenir hunters. I can't imagine, being in somebody's house and finding an old trunk, because I used to own an antique restoration company years ago in New York, and opening the trunk and finding a skull. I think I'd have a heart attack right there and die. Yep. So, newspaper reports that followed were all white-based. There were a few letters that were written to the NAACP that basically had a completely different response of what had happened. But the white folks said, nope, only a few victims. 2 white guys were killed. It was all July Perry's fault. This is terrible. Okay. Next, what happened is we've still got a few black folks that are living in town. They haven't all left immediately. But what happened with the KKK is not only did they blow up some houses of people that weren't leaving, they would hang paper skeletons on their front porch as a reminder that you're going to die if you don't leave. That was pretty horrific, too. So, we get to the point where we're now a sundown town plus Burley Jones. Allegedly, on one census report, I saw that there were 2 besides Burley Jones, there was 2 people altogether. There was another woman who was domestic help for a family in Ocoee. But that was it. So then we sell all the property off. Captain Sims is in charge of it. Now, most Norman, he probably made out the best out of everybody who had this horrific thing happen to him, because his mortgage was satisfied, which was $1,500, and he did receive $100 for his 5-acre grove. Not a lot. It was a $1,000 property assessment allegedly, but that also means it's probably worth a whole lot more. And then Perry's estate dragged on until 1932. 2/3 of the settlement went to legal fees, and the widow and the 6 heirs, $125.90 each. Yeah, that was crazy. Okay, now we go into the years right after. Okay, so in 1923, November 23rd, a group of Ocoee residents decided they were going to get together and make Ocoee be a town. They had a mayor, they had alderman, clerk. They wanted to be a town. So, okay, we've got the town of Ocoee. Fred Maguire was the first mayor. Fred's house was the one that was torn down recently across the street on McKee and Bluford. That was where the first mayor of Ocoee lived. Now, Maguire resigned in 1924 so he could be granted a franchise for a lighting plant. He decided that public service was not for him, making money was. And that's what he did. So then Hoyle and J.R. Pounds got the water franchise. PSC didn't take over till 1939. Now, the town of Ocoee decided it wanted to become a municipal government and be a city in 1925. Why? Because they could not get funding or loans or any kind of governmental aid unless they were a city. So if they wanted to raise money, they had to change their designation. So that's what happened. That's when we became a city. And the city continues to grow. There were conflicting reports that only white citizens lived till in Ocoee until 1981, but in the 1980 census there were 29 blacks and 7,803 whites. So a little bit of a difference, but still not like we are today. Today at least we have folks that we're all welcome here. And I think that's it for me. And we go to next.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. This is something pretty special. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. James Baldwin, famous writer, African American. And how appropriate are those words to what we've been faced with over the past 100 years? Nothing could be more appropriate. Next slide, please. Go ahead. Well, while we're figuring out the technical aspects of that, I will go 1925 time frame, when Ocoee actually became a municipality. During that time frame, and up until the 1989 time frame, a long 60-year span of time, nothing actually took place. Ocoee, if we phased it chronologically, went through a number of cycles. I like to describe it in terms of the 14 mayoral cycles that the city went through of administrators. And during that time frame, it was a known proposition that if you were in the city of Ocoee, you did not discuss the details of what had taken place during that time frame. We've already talked about phase one. We've talked about this incorporation. 1989 until 2003 was the first recognized effort at any type of implementation of a change that would recognize the existence of African Americans and minorities in the city of Ocoee. Phase four of it, we're talking at that point in time is I want to go back to 1989 because during that time frame, there was an organization created by a group of West Orange County businessmen and leaders and religious leaders that was known as the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force. And this body we call the Human Relations Diversity Board owes its origin and its beginning to the social, the political, and the economic pressures that were generated by those men of the community upon the existing leaders of the city of Ocoee during that time to take some action and do something about the conditions that existed. And the result of all of that, in the year 2003, 16 September, via City Resolution 2003-21, the Human Relations Diversity Board was actually created. Now, some people would say, well, what does an advisory board do to aid or talk about the enhancement of equality among minorities within the city? Our board serves as an advisory board to a group of elected officials, a mayor, and commissioners. And during that time frame, we sometimes win some, sometimes we lose some. But the fun of it all is when we really, really come down to the tax of what is involved, and we have our acts all put together, the commissioners listen, and we move. And I can say to you unequivocally that today, the organization that has existed for 17 years has made some of its greatest progress under the present commissioners that we have that support the effort, and to our mayor that support the effort. And thus, we're here today celebrating the commemoration of an atrocious act that occurred 100 years ago tomorrow. I'm going to now go on to the Ocoee, because I don't want to really, really dwell on a lot of the negativism. Go on to the next slide, if you would, please. This time of 1989, we came into a situation where we looked at what I like to describe sometimes as a history of avoidance. What do I mean when I say a history of avoidance? Well, from mayor to mayor to mayor to mayor, nothing really happened. It died. It went away. Nobody would talk about it. And subsequently, those of us like myself who came into the city 25 years ago in 1995, and our children actually have absolutely no idea of what had taken place. And so, following the guidelines that were established when the Human Relations Diversity Board was created, one of the things that we really want to do is tell the story. And in so telling the story, I believe that we honor the memory of those individuals. And in honoring the memories of those individuals, we seek to create the type of healing that a community needs. You don't light a candle and put it under a bushel. If so done, no one sees it, no one can benefit from it. And I do believe that this is an act of healing. And I would ask each of you today to look upon it in such a manner. We can't change what has taken place. There's no way we can unring the bell. But I know that there are some Christians sitting in this room today, and I know that in the hearts of our hearts, that you too want healing, and you want to move on to the next page. Let me have that the next slide, please. A total of 16 mayors, as I talked about earlier. And then we came to this young fellow that we call Rusty Johnson. I call him Rusty sometimes. Sometimes I call him Sir. Sometimes I say, hey there. And other times, we get into this exchange of words. And he's a very easily misunderstood individual. Why? I'm going to talk about you, Mayor, because I feel like I've earned the right to do that, and I want to do it in a dignified manner. I'm not going to embarrass you Sunday evening, and I was taught better than that by my mama. Okay? Mayor Johnson has a heart as big as this room. But if you don't know him, you probably will stand off on the sideline and go, who is that guy? Because if you don't approach him with truth, if you don't approach him with sincerity, you're not going to get to him. And we got to him. We did something that, of the 33 years as a commissioner, that nobody had ever been able to do. And you know how all that occurred? I took him on the road to Selma. I tell you what, this occasion is so special that you need to know the details of how we got here. Because there are those individuals, and this is not to be taken derogatorily. This is from the heart, folks. It's been pure hell getting to this point. And I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. Okay? If I were a victim, or if I were a descendant of a victim, I don't know how I would have behaved. But I can know that in the preservation of humanity, I can say to you, let us work there. Let us all come to a situation where we can look upon each other with a degree of civility and say, I feel your pain. And I'm willing to walk that mile in your moccasins because it could have happened to any one of us in this room. Once we got into the change aspects of the city of Ocoee, I want to say that 98 years had gone by. In 2 years, a little bit better than 2 years ago, we started putting together the concepts, the thoughts of how would we get to this day. What can we say that is big enough, that is meaningful enough to convey a meaningful message to the victims of those unfortunate circumstances that would convey a true, heartfelt meaning. And so we started working towards this event. And I'm going to move on to the next area there. I've talked about the 14 mayors that were in front of Mayor Johnson. Want to just go ahead and slip on through all of that because you've heard the history. You all know it. I don't want to sit here and bore you with nuts and bolts and details. Mr. Dabbs prominent member of this community for 50-plus years, and we're fortunate enough today to have some of Mr. Dabbs' relatives here. Would you please stand and be recognized? I believe we've got Miss Natalie Hatch. We got Miss Joanne Butler. And I believe this is the daughter of Ms. Natalie Hatch. They've grown so fast since the last time I saw them, I don't even recognize them. But I thank you very much, ma'am. I recognize those individuals as members of a man who was relentless in bringing this event to the light. Lester Dabbs was so intent on making sure that what had taken place was brought to light that he dedicated the latter years of his life towards making sure that the city would do something about it. And even in all of that, it took coming to this point. The Human Relations Diversity Board grew out of all of the efforts that were set aside by the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force. And when the Human Relations Diversity Board was tasked with the responsibility of doing it, we followed those guidelines that were set aside by, established by the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force, which was to tell the story, to honor the memory, to heal the wound. And we know that when the wounds are healed, the economic enhancement takes place. This city has gone from, when I came here 25 years ago, a little town of about 23,000, and today I believe we are rapidly approaching, if not beyond, 50,000. And that has got to say something positive about the little place that we call Ocoee. Let me have the next slide, please. And go ahead. We've talked about the resolution. Next slide, please. I want to comment here for a minute, because there is so much that you probably don't know. As is indicated on the slide, the state of Florida is 67 counties, 412 municipalities, 283 cities, 109 towns, 20 villages. And we, the city of Ocoee, are constantly bashed, defamed, that we don't have anything in the city that talks about or is oriented towards race relations, human relations, or anything of that type. And believe it or not, of those 412 municipalities, we, the city of Ocoee, are the only one that I've been able, through research, to identify with an advisory board appointed by the city council and the mayors that has a specific mission designed towards that of racial equality and cultural diversity. Now think about that. The only one in 412. You can go and check it out. I may not have gotten all of them, but I believe when you come back to our next meeting, you'll agree with me that Ocoee is on the move to doing and establishing and maintaining a positive image for the sake of all of its citizens, not any one particular segment. The last time I checked, in the 2017-2018 time frame, we had 37 ethnicities in this city. And I often refer to it as we are one of the most diverse cities there is within the state of Florida. Next slide, please. Thank you. Reconciliation is not an easy term dealt with, because it says that somebody has to take the effort to recognize that something has been done wrong. I know we got a lot of married people in the house, and we got a lot of family situations take place, and nobody wants to stop and say, well, it was my fault, I'm sorry. I'm not going to even ask the question to ask you to show a hand. How many of you who want to be the first one to stand up and say, I did it? None of you want to do that. I don't even like to do it too. Come on. I'm going to talk about Ocoee's future and where we can go to and where we should go to. I want to know from you here today, and I've asked, I believe in the booklets that you got, I've asked you if you would please take the time and put down your feelings, your thoughts about this, the beginning of change. Please leave us your thoughts as you come to your end of visitation here today. And I believe that we're at a point that the healing can begin. Let the healing begin. Please let the healing begin. We've lingered in the dark too long. And there's nothing positive about remaining in the dark. My heart's wide open to you. But life calls us forward. Let us move forward. Let us say to you, we're sorry for what took place. Let us meaningfully demonstrate to you as a municipality, as citizen to citizen, and whatever mode of communication can be effected between you. Let's join hands and move forward. There's a brand new world out there waiting on us, and we've got to provide the leadership to get there. Our children, the examples that we set for them is going to determine how we get there. And we can bridge that gap to tomorrow. But it's got to be done. It's got to be done from the heart. It's got to be done in deed. It's got to be done any way that is going to move us forward in a positive manner. Yeah, I have a prepared script, but I'm not going to sit here and treat you like you're high school students or college kids. We're talking reality here. We're talking lives. We're talking souls. We're talking deprivation that should never have taken place. For forgiveness for what has taken place. Look at each move forward. And I know some folks in the audience agree with me when I say that. Take me on to the next one, please. I want to talk about this young fellow for the next 5 minutes, and then I'm going to sit down. Ocoee's new leader and visionary who refused to accept concocted and inaccurate reports, who wanted to cast further disgrace upon Ocoee concerning its past history. Let me just comment on that briefly. I'm going to break it down to you. In April of 2017, I received a phone call to attend a meeting in Winter Park. That's my old age senility sitting in. But you got to forgive me, because if you keep living, you're going to get old too. Okay? And the prerequisite for getting old is you got to stay alive. All right? All right. That statement means this: that the outside influences, I don't want to get in front of you guys. I'm sorry, I'm a pacer when I talk. Some folk, the Italians can't talk without their hands. I'm black. I have to move when I talk. Okay? Ocoee became the focal point around the community, around the region, because of what had taken place. Put on the billboards, and it had not received the publication and the advertisement that an act of such nature was used as a target. During that time frame, we went from community to community to community. Ocoee, and we'd get a pretty good audience each time. And I didn't realize at that point in time just exactly what was happening, but when I brought it back in front of our mayor, the bottom line was there were at least a half dozen of these occasions, individuals would approach and say, "How do you work with this guy? He's bigoted. He's a racist. Really care about anybody but himself." And, I had to stop. Because good people come in all colors. And I said, if you don't know the man, don't condemn him. Give him an opportunity. Get to know him. But the one thing you don't ever want to go to him with is anything that is not truth. He's not going to buy it. And what his rejections had been up to that point, well, there were those out there who had said that 150 people were killed in Ocoee. 35 people were killed in Ocoee. The EJI initiative, as wonderful as they are, and all of the wonderful community remembrance projects they are making, they kind of put the cart in front of the horse because they identified among 11 southeastern states, they identified Florida, Orange County, Ocoee as a leading proponent out of 4,400 deaths, that more of those deaths had taken place in the community of Ocoee than the rest of the region combined. Now put yourself in that mayor's position now and tell me how would you feel that says your city is responsible for the terrorist lynching and killing of at least 33 people, and this is broadcasted nationally, all over everything. And when it was brought to our mayor, he said, "Prove it to me." I don't believe it. Lester Dabbs taught me better than that. I read his thesis, and I don't believe it. And that's where a division started to take place at that point in time, because we did not agree on how many African Americans had been killed, or lives had been taken during the 1920 Election Day Massacre. That is probably, and I don't want to speculate, but that is probably why we don't have more EJI people present today. That is also the rationale behind why the city of Ocoee elected to petition the Department of State, the History Department, and apply for the memorial marker. All of the community remembrance markers that are in place in the state of Florida today, and I believe we're going to do the second one here next Sunday, have been sponsored by EJI, because it gives EJI a platform on which they can continue their research and do the wonderful services that they're doing. But they didn't get it right in Ocoee's case, we don't believe. So we petitioned the Department of State. They approved the application on the 22nd of November, 2019. And we have the marker next door, under lock and key in a controlled environment, that we're going to put in place here in the city of Ocoee next Sunday evening at 6:45 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. But It is because that man stood up for the truth that this is happening today. And whatever he may or may not mean to you, I believe he has this city's best interest at heart, and I know he gets the support from the commissioners, and I believe we're getting the support from the citizens of the community because you're here today. I've talked a lot. I run my mouth. Go on to the next one, please. I know you don't really want to look at that, but just roll on by. I'll tell you when to stop. I'm going to sit down in 5 minutes, I promise you. 2 minutes. I'm told to sit down in 2 minutes. Okay. I wish I had not even bothered to write this thing, because along with the members of the Human Relations Diversity Board, along with the commissioners and along with the support services people and the Parks and Rec people, we have walked this walk, folks, for 2 years, 2.5 years. And we're here today, and I'm totally proud, Ms. McWhite, Mr. Thompson. I don't know the names of all of the other individuals, but I hope that you will follow this processional, or these proceedings, through until next Sunday. I believe you will come away with something that is different than what most people have tried to tell you about the city of Ocoee. We're here for change. We are in a state of change, and we're going to make this the best city that it's ever been. And on that note, I'm going to let all this go. I thank you very much for your patience and tolerance of me. Come back and see us on Wednesday, on Friday, and next Sunday, the grand finale. And we're going to hit it out of the park. But it's all about the descendants. It's all about the victims of the 1920 election, and it should never have taken place. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Nicole Dawkins, and I am a proud member of the Human Relations Diversity Board and this wonderful journey that we've been on. And thank you. So what I'm going to be doing is giving you a current day understanding of where we are at the HRDB. Dr. Crown took you through what happened in the past and the awful things that occurred. And then Maxwell was Maxwell. Not sure. And then now, now we're going to do what the HRDB is doing now, because the HRDB is very critical in this move. And when I came onto the board, I didn't realize that this was a board. I mean, other boards, you sat down, you drank some water, you say, yeah, we're going to let you park there, yeah, we're going to let you build buildings. And then this was a fight, like you were working when you came onto this board. And to tell you a little bit about it, it started off as Major Maxwell alluded to, the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force. So when that came into being, what it did was it was the first concerted effort to say something as a group. So before that, people talked, as one of the descendants shared with us, they talked amongst themselves. They talked in their families, maybe at church, but they didn't come into the community with a voice and said something. So that was the Reconciliation Task Force. It was the first beginning of that collective movement in Ocoee. So the early members of the task force worked very hard at establishing a thought pattern and a new direction for the city of Ocoee. Each member in their own right brought very special gifts and aspects and history to the Reconciliation Task Force. Some of the past members for this force was our past Mayor Lester Dabbs was a part of that, and he contributed so much that he actually shared with us at one time that he was actually assaulted for it by the KKK for putting this group together. So the efforts and activities of the task force in the West Orange area birthed the creation of the Human Relations and Diversity Board, which came together on September 16th, 2003. The resolution that brought us together was 2003-21, and that was shared with you earlier, so we're going to move past that. Now let's get on to the purpose of the HRDB, because I think we got a little bit of a kickback on this one when it came to be. So the general purpose of the HRDB is to promote understanding, respect, goodwill, and equality among all citizens and businesses of the city of Ocoee. So that sounds right? That's a good focus, but we actually got kickback not just from blacks, not just from whites, but also from blacks. And I'll tell you why. So from whites, of course, it was the whites who did not want to see a change or diversity. But from blacks, what we got is we were not actually projecting all black. We were actually projecting equality amongst all people. So it was an interesting spin. So the beginning of the board, we had low membership, as you can imagine. We got the board approved, the resolution is there, we are all excited. Now we need members. But think about it, who's actually going to sign up after you found out the history of Ocoee? You? No one is. So that was our biggest problem in the beginning, just getting to that first quorum. But finally, in January of 2005, the HRDB made quorum, and we began our earliest movements. So what did the board do? Now that we have a board in the city of Ocoee, we did things like Fiesta de Colores. That was really fun. This came from an event from the National Hispanic Heritage Month in 1968. The U.S. Congress authorized through President Lyndon B. Johnson to proclaim a week in September as National Hispanic Heritage Month. So we do have a large Hispanic population here in the city of Ocoee, and year after year, it kept getting bigger and bigger, and people coming out, and the music, the food. I'm real partial to the food, and it was an awesome event. It was an awesome event. We also did the Black History Essay Month contest, and this is the one that is near and dear to my heart. We had fifth graders from the different schools around Ocoee. We would vote on a theme. This theme would also carry over into our Martin Luther King Jr. parade as well. And they got to write about this theme. And it gave us a look into their hearts. Like, what's going on in the schools? What are the kids talking about? What's going on? And then we were able to talk about that as a board, and also talk about what future endeavors we could do along with the essay contest. The next one is the Martin Luther King Jr. Unity Parade. The last parade included over 46 entries and over 400 individuals, and that is growing from a handful. So that parade as well brings out a whole lot of people, and we did that over by the West Oaks Mall Unfortunately, due to COVID, we won't be having it this January. But each year, the parade always got bigger and bigger. The keynote speakers that came out, some of our past keynote speakers was Judge Belvin Perry. We had Pastor Brian Stamper, who was also part of the West Orange Reconciliation Task Force. We had former Orange County Public School Board member, Superintendent Ronald Blocker. We've also had the music artist, Cassandra Lewis from The Voice. So a lot of wonderful speakers came out and shared their stories as well. The last one we did was the Activities Diversity Art Contest. And this was in celebration of the cultural diversity of the West Orange County. The City of Ocoee's HRDB did its first annual one in 2017, and the contest was open to local high schools around the City of Ocoee. The winners received Best Buy gift cards ranging from $50 to $250. So it was a really good thing that we got to put on, and we're always looking for more activities to do in the board. So if you are looking, it's time for our commercial. So if you're looking to be a volunteer and you don't know what to do and you just have all this extra time, please consider joining the board. We are an active board. You will roll up your sleeves, but it is the most rewarding experience that you will ever do because it changes lives and it makes history. Okay? Okay, commercial over. Critical moments for the HRDB. The biggest moment, and you've heard this a million times, was going to Montgomery, Alabama. What did that do for the board? So the board meets once a month, every month, for about 1 hour. If Major Maxwell's is speaking, it's probably 3 hours. But on average, it's 1 hour. You know what? 1 hour. So if you think about team building, major projects, that only can happen when you have a team that really puts in a lot of time together, if any of you have done that type of thing before. Well, that meeting we were having every month didn't really give us an opportunity to do that. So let's bring in the trip to Selma, and that had to be one of the funniest, most life-changing experience I personally have ever had with a group of people. And there is the memorial there. There's a memorial, the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. If you have an opportunity to go there, please go. It's amazing. We all started walking into the memorial together. It was, Allie was there, Crown, Mayor, Maxwell, me. I think it was 5 of us. We walked in together, but when we walked out, we were separate, because it was something you could not do with somebody else. It was that powerful. It was that terrifying. It was that, what it did is when you came out of that, you had to make a decision. Do you keep going on as if nothing happened? Do you take the Band-Aid off and air it out? Should we just be quiet? Let's just kind of keep it right here. Or do we allow it to be what they showed us it should be? They gave us a call. It was a call. And when we came together, we put in some hours together, we fought, but in the end, it was, let's do this. So we came back with this. I can't believe we're here, but we came back with this. And those hours that we did since then, all the board members, the commissioners, the mayor, I'm sorry, I'm a crier. We said what we need to do in the City of Ocoee, the Human Relations Diversity Board that has been appointed by the city that serves at their pleasure, was say that we are sorry that that happened, we cannot imagine. We cannot imagine. We can try to walk in his shoes, but you know, there's some things that people go through. You'll never be able to walk in them kind of shoes. What they lost, we talked about what they lost. We talked about the property. I mean, they stole the property. I mean, property is valuable. That means something. But then we also wanted to do something different because people have told the story before, the tragedy part. But as the HRDB, what we want to do is also say, reconcile. Reconcile. We have to move forward. We can be as angry as we want to be, but when you're ready to sit down, let's do what we have to do and come together and move on, because Ocoee is a beautiful city. My 5 children live here. They have wonderful teachers. I'm surrounded by wonderful neighbors, and they are of all nationalities. It's a very diverse city. And we want to be a type of board that helps to move this forward any way that we can. I don't forgot where I was. So, declaration of the next steps. So what came down to current day Ocoee, we got to our, the Orange County Regional History Center. Some of you have already been out to the Ocoee exhibit. We got to be a part of that planning, the HRDB. And then our final thing that happened before today was the proclamation. And this proclamation is what pretty much set up today, that this marker would be here, that we will do this process, that we're going to come together as a community, as one, and walk through it together. So hopefully that kind of gave you a little bit of what the HRDB does, how we came into being, and just what we're looking to do, looking forward as a community and together. So you are in the operating room right now. Some of the people who know me, I've been walking around with a cane because I had ankle surgery. I have a wonderful surgeon who looked at pictures and said that, you know, we're going to have to go in and break this open and put in some screws and do some work. And when I did that, I wasn't able to walk for a few months. I had to use a wheelchair. Then I went from the wheelchair because the healing started. And I started using one of them little scooters, but my husband's good. He got me one of them furry cover scooters, looked like a Lexus. So I did my scooter. And now I've graduated to the cane. And I'm walking a little more. I'm starting to do the kind of dancing that I'm known for. And what I'm sharing that with you because Ocoee today, enter the surgery room with me. Let's break this sucker open. Okay? It's going to hurt. There's going to be some blood. There's going to be some tears. Let's do it. Because guess what? After we do it, you get to get in the wheelchair. And there's some nice wheelchairs out there. Okay? You can start moving. And then after that, Ocoee, let's go ahead and get the little scooter. And we can do the nice scooter. But then after the scooter, we're going to be able to walk together. Okay? So walk with us. Thank you.
So everybody take a deep breath. Let it out. I hope you did that with your mask on. What a powerful story. And as you can see, I've been on this journey with them. I was brought in as a consultant to help, what they said was help the mayor navigate because of all of those accusations. What I came in and helped do was build a bridge to a heart. connected hearts. I can remember those conversations that were funny. We found things in Montgomery we won't tell you about. Be careful where you eat when they have cattle processing in the same building. But at the same time, the camaraderie that was built, the spirit of caring that was brought about led to the proclamation, led to this activity. And I think we should give our mayor and the HRDB another round of applause. So we are to go into a questions and answer session at this point. Is there anyone with any questions or comments that our HRDB can address?
What is it going to take when we do come together? The spitting, the fighting, the anger. I know it takes that to get into the scooter. I understand that. But we are human with emotions, with feelings. What is it going to take when we do come together? To stop screaming, yelling, that same attitude that you are taking now, that the Perry family is taking. Mayor, what is it going to take to stop this rhetoric, I'm on top attitude? What is it going to take? Is it going to take death? A military? Is it going to take someone's child this day getting killed in a storefront, at a garage, at a filling station? What is it going to take? It's hideous. It's just as tragic in one of these meetings as when they tell me the story of my family. Commissioners can't speak to this mayor. Mayor can't speak to this commissioner. Stop the rhetoric. Get a heart. A heart made of flesh. Isn't that what Christ said? Isn't that what love is about? Oh, y'all don't have to go with me. You don't have to go with me. It has to stop. Somebody got to have a spirit of wisdom. My grandmama used to say, "Oh, Tennessee horse sense." Somebody got to take the reins and say, "That's enough." Enough is enough. God bless you. When is it going to stop? That's the question.
My name is Mary Maxwell, and I heard the story. I don't need that thing.
Record it for history.
Oh,
Do you use that microphone?
oh, no, I don't mind, but I can speak loud. Okay.
Please use the mic.
Oh, I don't mind, I don't mind.
Okay.
My name is Mary Maxwell.
Talk it into
I live in Orlando. That's good? Can you, is that better? Okay, okay. My name is Mary Maxwell. I live in Orlando. I always had the fear of driving down 50. I heard the story from Reverend Fred Maxwell. I heard the story from Mr. A.M. Johnson. They were boys. They remember the story. I carried that fear in me for years. 8 years ago, I took it upon myself, and I went into one of the stores, and I bought a book. But the entire time I was in that store, I felt very uncomfortable. I did not feel safe until I was on Silver Star and Clark Road. The fear of someone was going to pull me over for speeding, pull me over to check my tag. I wouldn't worry about my color. I don't worry about color. But I worry about other people who have the fear of us. But I want to say today, thanks to I call him my son, Allie Braswell. I started coming to your events here in Ocoee, and I started taking photos. The first time I was here, I was so afraid. I was really afraid. But you know what? I can stand here today and tell you I have no fear of Ocoee.
Praise the Lord.
I have no fear. I've gone into City Hall. I was afraid. I've even talked with your mayor. He had the nerve to ask me to move to Ocoee. I told him, no way, one condition. He'd find me a little piece of land, put me a little house on it, then I would move to Ocoee. Now, Mayor? Yes, ma'am. That still stands, okay? Still stands, okay? That's the only way. But I want to say to each of us today, we have to look within ourselves.
Amen.
So we have to search ourselves. Nobody can do it but us. You know, we have to learn how to love. Love. I know we hurt. Sweetheart, I know you hurt. My grandfather, I'm from Georgia, was tarred and feathered, brought home, put on the porch for dead. They had to get into a wagon and walk away from Terrell County. Anybody know anything about Albany, Dawson, Georgia? Terrell County. If you can live through all of that, and I had that fear from my grandparents, but I can stand here and tell you today, love conquers hate.
Amen.
For those of you that's in here that still have that hate in you because of the color of our skin, cut me, I'm going to bleed. Cut you, you're going to bleed. You can use my blood, I can use your blood, but you still can't shake my hand. I have a problem. We have a problem. So I say to us today, thank you for this day. It's 2020. Everybody talk about this is a terrible year. Today is a day of reconciliation.
Amen.
Today is a day.
Mary, are you related to me? Are you possibly related to me? My name is Maxwell as well. I know many things of him. I never had the occasion of meeting the gentleman. Amen. Mary, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.
So Chairman Maxwell, we have a question on the floor. What's next? Is there an answer or response from the HRDB?
My answer or my response, and this is Bill Maxwell, is we've each got to look into ourselves because each of us are limited by our frames of reference gathered wherever we have gone individually and collectively as a sum of our experiences and how we relate to other people will determine how people relate to us. You know, there's an old expression, I grew up in the cotton fields of Selma, Alabama. I'm not ashamed of that. And I always got told by my granddaddy, take the mule down to the stream and give him some water or let him get some water. Well, I learned real quickly that I could take the mule down there, but I couldn't make the mule drink. So the analogy here is we're going to deal in truth. And we're going to extend the hand of fellowship, the hand of brotherhood, the hand of love forward to anyone, to all takers. And, you know, in the little 4-H group that I've worked with for the last 20 years, my philosophy is if I can just reach one in the process of doing that, my journey, my fight will have been worthwhile. So I volunteer to be that first one.
Okay. I'd like to comment on that. And this is what I tell my children. No matter who you're dealing with, the only person you can control is yourself. Okay? So when you're in a situation, and we're not always going to agree. We will not always agree. On the HRDB, I let it be known, we don't always agree. Okay? But we can only control our own selves as far as being respectful, as far as being, whether we're screaming or shouting, and you can never control the other person, but let it be known of yourself. And then what tends to happen when you make that a habit, other people start picking up the habit. My mom used to say that, be that bigger person, so to speak. So whatever situation we're in, if we have people come to our meetings and they like to express, and they'll express whatever's in their heart to express, we have to make it our business to treat them with respect and treat them kindly, regardless of what's being said. And at some point, to pray and hope that they'll also model us. Like I can't put a date on it. I can't say, this is never going to happen or that's never going to happen. I can't say that you may not go to a store right now and feel like you're not comfortable, or whoever's, that person's there is making you feel a certain way. Because we still got a ways to go. Even though today we're doing what we're doing, we're not at the end, by any stretch of the imaginations. But we can pray for our own selves and how we conduct and how we, learn to share. I was actually, my family and I was doing a devotion this morning, and we were talking about control of yourself and how that takes more energy. We related it to the Hoover Dam. If you ever been to like the Niagara Falls, or you feel the power of the water, that's what our emotions are like. It's like it flows in us and it's powerful, and depending on what the situation is and what's going on. But just hoping that as we go into conversations, because conversations are going to happen because of this event. But as we talk to each other, especially if you don't agree with the person you're talking with, that we are able to have control, that we're able to be that dam, that we're able to hold back that force that just wants you to, express yourself the way you really want to express yourself, if you understand what I'm saying. Because in that, when we talk about conversations and we talk about making moves and decision-making and moving forward, that's the only way we're going to be able to do it calmly, to be able to talk to one another. So that's the only thing I can say on that.
And I'll finish it up and add that as we move forward, I think that if we could all learn to look at things from other people's shoes, stand in someone else's shoes. You may not agree with them, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's not my way or the highway. It's not your way or the highway. It's our way makes the highway, and we go there together. And that's what we need to do. And that's how we're showing folks that if the city of Ocoee can get it together and we can move forward together from this, everybody can.
With that, I'm going to keep us on schedule and say thank you to the members of the HRDB. And what a powerful question. And if I just may add just a comment, sir, and I want to make sure I got my Army brothers' attention here. It's about intentionality and deliberateness. The intention, it can't be feigned. It's got to be deliberate action. You ask questions about why can't the mayor talk to the commissioners and the commissioners talk to the mayor. I remember a president brought together a police officer and a homeowner. And I'm not going to say you have to drink a beer, but maybe takes a glass of tea. And you might need to sit down and put your feelings behind you so that you can have a conversation about the future that's ahead of us. And it's through those conversations, when people sit down and dialogue, that we find out we have so much more in common than we have apart. I like to tell people it's called 3 L's when you sit down and you have conversation. First, you must listen with an intention to hear the other person. You must hear it through the ears of the other person. You must feel it through the heart of the other person. And you must see it through the eyes of the other person. For if you only watch it from your point of view, nothing will change. Just wanted to make sure we gave you real answers to your question. And that's what I would call upon everybody to do. The next time, Mrs. Maxwell always puts me on the spot because she is Mother Maxwell. And in 58 years of being on this earth and being a little kid from Oviedo, who my parents told me you could be anything that you wanted to be, and it wasn't about the color of my skin. And Ida Mae Anderson telling me I had a voice, and what would you do with it, Mr. Braswell? Are you going to be using it, or are you going to be silent? I would say City of Ocoee, y'all heard Ida Mae Anderson's cry today. Y'all came together to begin a dialogue. It's a dialogue that's going to have to continue. It's going to have to move past thoughts and pressures of other people to be able to accomplish the greatness of a city on the rise. But I remember sitting down 2 years ago, maybe it was 3. I do suffer from what Bill says, as you get older, you can't remember dates. But I sat there with his son, and I said, I see a day when Ocoee will no longer be a sundown town, but be recognized as a sunrise city. I'm seeing that day begin to evidence. And with that, I can't think of a better way than to have welcome to the stage now our elected officials to the City of Ocoee to share their closing remarks. Mayor and elected officials. So if y'all come together, is this like a meeting? We supposed to notice it? Okay, so it's noticed. Y'all know they're here. I think we did properly notice it, though.
Let's hope so. Welcome. Before we get started, I'm going to let, it just said 5 minutes, and anybody knows politicians, you can't do it in 5 minutes, much less 4 of us. So, and 5 of us, really, and I'm really glad to see everybody's here. So what I want to do real quick is let each one of the commissioners give a couple of minutes of talk that we're going to have all week. We get to each voice different things during the week. Before I end up, I want to let each one of these guys come up, and the young lady, and give us a little talk, and then we'll move on from there. Commissioner Brinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me back there? I got a kind of a loud voice, so bear with me a moment. I'm happy to be here. And for those who know me, know that I got a big mouth. And I say what's on my mind, but normally what's on my mind, I try to make it for the better good of the whole, and not for me. I think I've made a pretty good life for myself, and so, but as I look out and see all y'all here today, there's a question that comes to mind, and it's important because this question is how many residents and homeowners or business owners in the city of Ocoee today are actually descendants of the victims of the 1920 Ocoee Massacre. I think that's an important question because as I ponder it in my mind's eye, I look back and I see a time where the settlement of Ocoee largely was in the hands of African Americans. But here we are today, and I am now stand before you as the second African American elected commissioner or elected official completely in the city of Ocoee. So that's progress being shown here in Ocoee. And so there's something else that I have to say, and that is families like the Normans and the Hightowers, the Sims, the Carmichaels, and the like, and yes, the Perry family it's important that we take special note because these families championed a cause 40 years ago because the federal government really failed to step in to ensure that the 15th Amendment was being honored. And yet, even on this day, this very day we stand before you, which is election time, we are still engaged in discourse concerning the disenfranchisement of African American voters in America. That is important for us to be honest. We want to talk about reconciliation, and we want to talk about truth. We can't talk about one without the other. It's not truth or reconciliation, it's truth and reconciliation. So I haven't much time, so I would say this. Descendants, those of you who have been able to join us here today, I have read a rather lengthy letter of apology, the same one that you have in your booklets. However, I thought to myself that what might it read had I authored such a letter? Dare I say that mine would not have been of such a length. In fact, I believe mine would have been very concise and yet direct. Had I written this letter of apology to the descendants, it may have went something like this. To the victims, descendants of the 1920 Ocoee Election Day Massacre, we are sorry that on November 2nd, 1920, your African American ancestors sought to exercise their right to vote in the presidential election. Instead, on that day, in the ensuing week, unspeakable racism, bigotry, fear, and jealousy engulfed the African American residents in the settlement of Ocoee and in the northern quarters at all. The culmination of this highly combustible mixture produced the worst act of humankind in American history, resulting in your family's loss of businesses, livelihoods, the theft of personal property, and an untold number of your family members being threatened, beaten, tortured, and murdered. Subsequently, your families were scattered to the four winds. So traumatic were these events, some vowing never to return or even speak the name Ocoee ever again. Therefore, with great humility, we, the City of Ocoee, ask the descendants of the victims of the 1920 Ocoee Election Day Massacre to forgive us. And we pledge that we shall work ever so diligently towards diversity, inclusion, healing, and education. In doing so, we shall endeavor to ensure your family's legacies should not be ever discounted, dismissed, or disregarded, but instead held in high esteem. And I would go ahead and I would sign this on this second day of November in the year of our Lord, 2020. Thank you.
Commissioner Oliver. Commissioner Oliver.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. It's not many times that I'm speechless because right now, this has to be probably one of the most difficult times I've had probably since I can remember, my entire life. The mayor and I have a very complicated relationship, to say the least. But I will say this before I say what I'm about to say, because I've heard many things this afternoon that talks about getting over the pain, moving forward, and how do we bridge that gap to come together as one city, one Ocoee, to move forward. And as I can say, we've had some very contentious conversations, and our relationship has been pretty contentious over the past 2.5 years. One thing I can say is the fact that beyond politics, when you go beyond politics and you start talking about sports and whatever else we want to talk about, the weather or whatever it may be, there's a couple things I do believe. I believe that we both have the same goals, and that's to move our city forward. Sometimes I just believe we have different ideas about going about it. And I do believe that, I've spent time with him before. We've been to National League of Cities, Florida League of Cities. I've actually spent time with him without talking about politics. And I had a great time with him. I can say that.
But I can also say that I've had some times that I just disagreed with some things, how some things went. So I tell you that to say this. I know I only have a minute, but if you would bear with me here, in the things that I have dealt with over the past week, a week and a half, I have spent many nights up, 3, 4 in the morning. I have cried many nights. I promise you, I've cried many nights sitting on the side of the bed, just waiting for this moment to come. I was happy, upset, angry, hurt, so many emotions that I've been going through, and there's no way for me to move forward if I don't say the things that I have to say. Because I want to move forward with the city. I want to move forward with each and every one of you. I want to move forward with this man here. But until I say what I have to say, because I can keep it all in, and I can go home and I can tell my wife everything that I had to say, but I didn't say it. And I'll live with regret, and I won't sleep. So in order for me to move forward, I have to say the things that I have to say. The 15th Amendment passed in 1870. The rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied should not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or privilege or previous conditions of servitude. Approximately 40 years after the 15th Amendment, a militia of murderous white citizens burned the black section of Ocoee in the ground, stole their land. They were shot, lynched, and murdered her hardworking black citizens. Close to 300 souls shattered. They were scattered in the wind, never to return home, never to come back to Ocoee. You know, they gave me 1 minute here. 1 minute, I know. I got 60 seconds. They gave me 60 seconds. It was over 60 years before the first African-American returned to Ocoee. And another 30-some odd years, another 38 years before the city of Ocoee elected its first African-American commissioner. Unfortunately, you wouldn't have read that in your program because it was omitted. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is George Oliver III, and I am the first African-American commissioner in the city of Ocoee. That's forward. That's progress. I'm someone who has earned the right to speak more than 60 seconds. I respectfully submit to you that we're not here to talk about me at all. We have to honor the memories of those who 100 years ago initiated and earned the right to cast their votes. They were met at the polls by a hateful mob of angry Klansmen, only to be slaughtered hours later. So when I read the words on the front of the program that says they had no place to go, it gives me pause, because I was under the impression that the African-American citizens of Ocoee were free men and women and not slaves. They had already reached their promised land. They were home. Therefore, when I read the words on page 2 that says, they knew not the perils lay ahead of them, it made me wonder why we're offering words of tributes to slaves seeking freedom for people that were already free. After reading page 4 through 7, and the caption says forward, there was a gleam of hope that we were now ready to start our journey of healing. However, after reading these pages, I only saw a tribute of the Citizens Human Relations and Diversity Board. No mention of how far we've actually come. To mention our first female assistant chief of police, our first African-American deputy chief of police, our first African-American director of public relations. That's just to name a few. We have so many firsts to celebrate here, but I don't see them in this program. And it hurts not to see it, not to recognize it, not to know how far we've come. We have so many reasons to celebrate forward. Unfortunately, you cannot read about those things in this booklet, which only presents a very narrow view of how we're moving forward. I would like that view to be expanded even more. As I continue reading the booklet, I arrived at page 10 to find the words, "We may never learn the real truth." I submit to you, how can we ever learn the truth if the descendants have not been allowed to tell their story? We have many descendants living here in the state of Florida and Orange County which have not been allowed to tell their story. Page 12 mentions Samuel T. Salisbury as a leader of the terrorist mob that raided the home of Julius July Perry. One historical fact that's missing is the fact that Sam T. Salisbury was the chief of police in Orlando. So picture this. What happens when we have a police officer that is injured or wounded or shot in the line of duty? Every officer within a 20-mile radius will come to the rescue. So just to give you a modern day glimpse of how this played out is because we had Lieutenant Deborah Clayton that was shot by Marquise Lloyd a few years ago. And every law enforcement agency within a 20-mile radius came to the rescue to capture and apprehend Marquise Lloyd. I know because I was in the airport and I saw officers from all over the place, and they were there. Now imagine Sam Salisbury as a chief of police being injured in the line of duty, and the word goes out that there's people in Ocoee that's shooting police officers. So imagine the mindset now as to what happened and how we ended up with so many people from all over this county coming into the city to do what they did. I'm not saying that everyone in that militia was in Ocoee residents. No, because there were many that were in Orlando, Winter Garden, or Lake County. So again, they were outsiders that started a lot of this. The photograph on page 14 depicts a hand covering July Perry's last name. It could be misled to those that would read the book 5 or 10 years from now, someone that does not know Mr. Perry's story, and it would simply appear that as a date of a hand a date over a headstone. Surely there were many other photos of Mr. Perry that could have actually been used. Page 15 explains how Mayor Johnson was willing to ask the tough questions for those who came from outside. I find it extremely offensive because those so-called outsiders were descendants along with friends and families from the members, family members. To be called outsiders is offensive and hurtful. Those folks should be considered the lost sons and daughters of Ocoee, and they should have been welcomed home. Instead, they were labeled as outsiders. And again, that hurts. The following pages of tributes to the HRDB, followed by several pages of bios. Page 31 shows a brief bio of the highlighted artists from Iowa. The disturbing thing about this, to me, is the fact that they thought it not robbery to afford the opportunity to a local artist that possibly knows the story of the Ocoee Massacre. But yet, still, it would be a good idea to reach across the country to find an artist to illustrate this story. The last few pages highlight a proclamation from the City of Ocoee, signed by our mayor, along with a formal apology that I laid eyes on just a few days ago. As for the proclamation, I can't say that I will rest my faith in the truthfulness of his words because I have never heard the mayor read it in a private or a public setting. If you've seen what I have seen and you've heard what I have heard, then you will understand how I feel. Until those words are openly read with truth and compassion, I will put little to no faith in the truthfulness of that document. Lastly, I would like to address the absence of the names of the 257 African-American Ocoee residents in the booklet. Yes, we can speak their names. However, it's like dust in the wind. Just as quickly as you speak their names, they're quickly gone, just that quick. However, to put these names in this booklet for all to see, far and near, will not only memorialize their memories, but it will immortalize their legacy. I'll leave you with this. Representative Ian Omar of Minnesota, 5th District, Congressional District, said it best. If your freedom relies on my continual oppression, then neither of us are free. I believe in this city. I believe in the leadership in this city. And I believe that the tough conversations have started, and there's going to be more tough conversations. But I believe that we're all willing to suck up our pride, our hurt, our pain, to open our ears and our hearts to others to hear what they have to say. And I think we can all come together as one Ocoee. And I pray that I live to see that day that we can all come together and say, we are one Ocoee. To mess with one of us, you got to mess with all of us. Thank you so much. God bless.
Commissioner Wilson.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosemary Wilson. I'm Commissioner in District 2. And what I'd like to take a moment to thank the HRDB Board, for the Lester Dabbs and his family, and for the Reconciliation Committee that was originally started everything. At this point, forgiveness is a very important word, and I believe that. And I believe that we, as a city, are moving forward. And I thank them because I moved here in 1997, and I did not know the history of Ocoee. But today, seeing what's happening now and seeing everyone here, I know that Ocoee is moving forward. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Hello. Is this on? Hello, my name is Richard Ferstner, and I'm your commissioner from District 3. I'm not a lifelong resident of Ocoee. I came here in 1995 and joined the fire department. Served 14 years on the fire department, saw a great deal of change in those 14 years. I retired, and I found that I needed to get back to the city. I missed the city greatly after I had left. I missed the people that I worked with. I missed the administration. I missed the growth of the city and where it was going. If you look around this audience, you'll see how diverse it is. Blacks and whites, all sitting together, all listening to the same message. That's very representative of the entire city, the way that it is. We have a diverse city. Look at the commission and the makeup of it, very diverse. We have 2 African Americans, a female, me, and the mayor. It works very well. We all have a difference of opinion, but we all have a voice. The thing is that we all share the same common goal. We want to represent the people of Ocoee, the residents, our constituents, the best we possibly can. We want to give them the best city that we can to live in. And I think we've come a long way. I'm very proud of the city of Ocoee, where it has come from. Fortunately, I did not have to experience those horrors back in the 1920s, either personally or through my family. I was very lucky to come here in 1995 when the racism and the bigotry wasn't as prevalent as it was back in the 1920s. Where we're going is the right direction. And to see all you people here willing to get on board and help that train move in the right direction really does my heart good. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I don't know. I don't think I said 1 minute. I asked him. I just said come up and make comments. So Here's the problem. I want to talk freely, and I want to say things, and I want to, especially to the families. We didn't do everything perfect. We didn't do everything right, but we did it. We worked towards solving this when we had people working all the time to stop it, always trying to get us to do something else. And a couple of things to clean up some stuff to start with. I want to apologize once more, and I don't know if any of you know, some of you do, some of you don't. I am a hard person. I say things sometimes, but I didn't know, and I asked. This thing goes back to, and I want to personally invite Senator Bracey to come out this week, have him. I'm going to call him again this week and see if I can get him to come. But I want to personally again tell you that I apologized a couple of days after I got into an argument with him in our commission meeting, and I apologized to him. And everybody on the commission, I apologized to him. But we all have our ways. We all have things to do. Listen, I want to tell you a few things. We have one of the most diverse employees in this city. Well, we got almost, we got over 400 employees. They're not just white. They're black. They're Vietnamese. They're Indian. I mean, we had a finance director for 26 years, this black American lady that was one of the sweetest ladies you ever wanted to see. She ran our finance department. So it's not new. And listen, when you get elected to office, and any of you here, I know I see a lady back there running for office, you are elected by you, the people, whether who you are. You're elected to be that person's commissioner, no matter who you are. I'm not looking at you as that. I look at you as, when you call me at my house, I don't say, what color are you? I say, what can I do for you? And that's the way it is, and I'm pretty strict about that. My wife can tell you, and she's told me not to say too much. She gets on to me all the time because I say things, but listen, I love this place. I love all the people, just like that lady. I didn't know Miss Maxwell walked in that day, and I said, hey, why don't you move to Ocoee? I mean, that's the way I am. But you can make all the comments. This book might not be right. But let me tell you something. These people, Bill Maxwell and that board has done an excellent job putting this together. When, you know, come on. You can dislike it. You can not like it. But we're here to do things for your family, all the families that are involved in this, all the families. Listen, heart. Heart to me means a couple of things. When my mother and father and my two brothers died, that's where my heart was affected. My heart hurts for you, your families, all of you, even to now. I can't do anything about what happened 100 years ago. But my heart bleeds for you because I know how you feel. Because I mean, I know what my grandchildren and my children, I try to tell them what it is for family. So I know how you feel, and I love every one of you, and I hate it. But I can't do anything about that now. That happened a long time ago. This city started, let me tell you something real quick. These three young ladies sitting back there, their father and grandfather was one of the most amazing men that I ever met. I went to high school in this place, and he was my teacher in high school. He came in 1960-something. I don't remember what, it might have been 62. And his future wife she taught my brother, and he taught me. Civics, American history, Americanism versus communism. He taught me, but what he taught me was the love of people, how to love people. Don't hate people. And listen, when you lived in Ocoee, we didn't have any blacks here, so you didn't know. But I knew because I grew up on a farm in South Carolina where my parents and my uncle, I went every summer and worked on a farm with the blacks, and that's what I did. I didn't think anything any different. But believe it or not, you can think what you want to about me, but I love people. And it's just like today. I was told, there were people told them not to come to this. Believe me, we want you here. We want you to know that this city is moving to put the right thing in the right order. So you can't sit and judge people if you don't. To me, one of the words they preach is unity. That means everybody's got to work together. Listen, I'm not a big politician. I've been in politics a long time, and I'm not a perfect speaker, and I try to write things down. My wife tells me I can't do that. I just have to speak. And I'm telling you, that Mayor Lester Dabbs, and I've worked towards it, but Mayor Lester Dabbs is the one who got this started. He put us on the road because he called hell, folks. I'm sorry to say that. That man called hell in this town over that. And when you're growing up and you see people he tried to run for office years and years ago and got almost run out of town that time, which was wrong. But what do? You change wrong things and make them right. You go back and try to make the wrong things right. And that's what this city is doing. You can't sit on the board and hold your color against what somebody else is doing. You've got to work together. That means everybody. Work together. Like I said, I want to say something real quick in a funny way about driving. You ever been in a boy from a young man from Ocoee? I wasn't young, but I was old. But driving in Alabama, in Selma, Alabama, and driving a black man in the back seat, and I'm driving, it ain't something you picture. So, but he said I was a driver, and they all rode in the back seat, and I had to drive him. But when and I'll tell you what they call that truck, but I can't say that in public either. It's B-A-T, and I won't tell you what the A stands for. But you get to know people, and I was a little leery when I don't want to take too long, and I know he said, but I was a little leery when I went up there and seen things, and when I got there, how you can go through this memorial and see the things and hear the things that happen. It's eerie. You feel it when you're walking through this memorial. You feel the things, and they're right. You kind of separate yourself out where you can sit where yourself and you talk to yourself and you say, how in the hell could this happen? What kind of people do things like that? And I honestly don't know. Like I said, I'm 74 years old. I've been around a long time. I've been in office since 1986. And honest to God, I'll do anything for anybody that lives in the city of Ocoee. I say it at meetings. I don't believe in the outside telling us what to run our city. I can listen to you, but you don't tell us this is what we're supposed to do. It's our city. Faith. I think everybody has to have faith. I grew up. Sometimes I do things I shouldn't maybe have done. But, I come home from the Army in 1971 from Vietnam, and I spent 2 years in the Army, and I come home, raised my son, and got married, and I got 5 kids now, and we got 11 grandchildren. And I try to teach them the same thing. Believe in your fellow man. My granddaughter is twin. She turned 10 a couple weeks ago. And Senator Bracey's daughter is my granddaughter's best friend. I told that to somebody, and they about passed out. They couldn't believe it. And we were at a place, and we were next day they were having my granddaughter's birthday party, and my daughter said, I haven't heard from London. I think her name is London. Said, I haven't heard from London. My granddaughter, it took an hour to get her to quit crying. That is her best friend. She went to school at Hope Charter before that, first of the year, and wrote on Who's Your Best Friend, and that was who she wrote about. She doesn't know hate, and I don't want them to know hate. So that's the problem. When you still think that, and you're still thinking that, I've been here since 1955, and I didn't start after I got elected. I started before I got elected, way before, working in the city, working to do this. And I'm telling you, this board, 17 years ago, started it. Allie went along with us. They come along with us. Brother Dorsey's there. All these people are working to do what's right for these families. And I am so honored to have you here today. It is a pleasure to have you here. And listen, we get wrote about all the time. I know something's here today. It was in the paper. You read it all the time. Believe me, you ought to be the mayor in the city of Ocoee and been here all your life and listen to people. Go to the restaurant and sit down with me sometime if you want to hear some things. And they say things to me, and I just say, hey, listen, life moves on, and we got to move on. So that's what it is. We're going to all move on. Let's see. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, and this is what really, really got me to where the change was coming, is when we were going to Selma, Alabama, we come upon the memorial in between Montgomery and Selma of a young lady, a white young lady, that got killed by the KKK because she was driving some of the marchers to Montgomery from Selma. They killed her. She had 5 children. She had come all the way from Michigan because she had seen that going on in the riots and the stuff in the news. She volunteered to come there and drive these people. She got killed, left 5 children. So all people don't hate. Some people, there's different ways you can do things. But I want you to know that, believe me or not, like I said, I'm not sometimes the friendliest person, but I will do what's right for people. So I wanted you to know that that's what we're doing here. This is a place that I want you to know, Miss Maxwell, the parish people, anybody can come here. I wish you'd call any of them that you know that didn't come today and have them come and have fellowship with us and see what's going on and what we're doing in this town. I got 2.5 years left. I'm going to work hard as I can to get everything the way it is. If we didn't set the right way in the book, I apologize. You know, everybody's not perfect. But we meant it from the heart, what we did say and what we're trying to do. It's to the point where you work towards getting that done, and that's what we've done. Personally, I'd like to thank all the diversity board people. I know they hear it, they get it at the meetings with us, and, you know, it's a constant fight, you know, about something, and they don't listen to it. They jumped right on board and did their job and did what they were supposed to do, and I really appreciate it. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today's event, especially the descendants and their families. It is our hope that today's symposium and the rest of the events scheduled for this week will allow reconciliation, begin to heal the wounds, and lift the cloud of racism that has hung over our city for far too long. I always find that others have spoken far more eloquent than me, so I am going to quote Nelson Mandela. In the end, reconciliation is a spiritual process which requires more than just a legal framework. It has to happen in the hearts and minds of people. If you don't want to change, you won't change. That's what I believe. And I have changed, and I'm going to keep changing and keep moving to the right way. Anytime that I can help any of the descendants, I will do that. Look, once again, I don't know, I guess I'll turn it back over to Addie. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, my families. We love everybody here. We love the city, and I'm going to keep doing what I got to do. I don't want to argue with people, but listen, everybody has to work on the same. Like I said, if you're elected to an office, you're elected to do what's right for all citizens of the town. Once again, thank you. Thank you for the families for coming. Bring anybody else you want to during this week, and let's all get together and celebrate, and not celebrate, but remembrance of your families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you, commissioners, for your comments. We're going to move next to our benediction by Pastor Keith Tower, but before he takes the stage, as he's walking, we want to thank High Point Church and their staff. You know, when you're an MC, you want a schedule to run by. I can't tell you that I've ever seen better run of show. I tried to keep us there. I can't control politicians. But with that, we're going to have our benediction, and I'm going to let us close on the song. So I want to just remind you that on November 4th, we'll be meeting again. We'll be right here where we will commemorate the 257 names. And that will be led by pastors, and it'll be a memorial commemoration. Then join us again on the 6th. In your program is the entire schedule. Please be guided by the schedule that is in the program and join us. And then on November 8th, we come back again, and we will end that with a candlelight procession to the memorial, where we will have it in place, and we'll unveil it, and we will do what Mayor Johnson and I talked about, and we won't say where the conversation took place, but it was, you don't get here without having some heated words, folks. And you can imagine being a pay consultant at that time, and you got to tell your client, no, you're wrong. You got to think about it this way. You can't put it to bed. You got to memorialize and lay him to rest. And to see the members of that board go through the changes, I would invite you, if you don't have a schedule yet, put Montgomery, Alabama on your radar. Go to the museum and feel this for yourself. I got to stand back and watch as we all separated, as we looked at the sarcophagi hanging with the 18 people that were killed on November 2nd and 3rd in 1920. I got to watch Bill Maxwell. I got to watch Nicole Dawkins. I got to watch Rusty Johnson. I got to see the changes in hearts. And it was really great, so that when we did have that, it wasn't that heated, but when we had that terse conversation, the difficult conversation, you could see the change, and it's been evidenced in the documents and the hard work that this board and others have done. So with that, I'm going to close out my piece and say that following the benediction from Pastor Keith Tower, We will then have a song, We Shall Overcome, led by Reverend Dorsey and Nicole Warner. It's been a pleasure to host you. I look forward to hosting you again on the 4th, the 6th, and the 8th. And let's stay committed to Ocoee, because together we can see this through. Thank you, Pastor Keith.
Mr. Braswell, you had the impossible task of keeping on track with politicians, and then you handed it to a preacher. So good luck. Well, it's an honor to be able to do the benediction. I'm going to keep in today's tradition and go off script for just a moment and say what's on my heart. And here's what's on my heart. You ever have that awkward feeling when you walk into a family dispute? That's me right now. I'll never forget there was a time my wife and I were having what we like to call intense fellowship, if you know what I mean. Things weren't great, and we were arguing, and we were heated up, and our doorbell rings, and I'm like, I had the greatest, just to put her in her place. And I walk to the door, and it's my pastor. And he said, I was just in the neighborhood, and I felt like, I wish you hadn't felt like I should stop by. And he walks in, and it was the most awkward, challenging moment. And then he sat at our kitchen table. And before long, we served him some sweet tea. And before long, he broke the ice. And before long, we talked. And before long, he left. And I went back in, and I couldn't remember what my good comeback was. And my wife couldn't remember what we were arguing about. Because Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. And even though he never addressed our issue, he was a man of peace. Sir, you asked, what do? There's a blessing when we're peacemakers. And if we decide to be people of peace, there will be peace. And if we decide to be peacemakers, there's a blessing in that. To the descendants, let me first say, thank you for being here. I'm humbled as a pastor in Ocoee. I see your pain. Can't imagine what it's like, but I just want you to know I see that. And there's been a lot of talk today about reconciliation and healing and moving forward. And today's not the day for that. It's too soon. Today is the first step of the first step. And we acknowledge that. And it would be unfair for us to tell you to move forward until different things have happened. Wednesday, we are going to honor the memory of your descendants, big time, and appropriately. And I invite you to be there. I'm going to help lead and facilitate that with other pastors in this community. And we're going to do what should have been done a long time ago. And they are going to be honored right, and they are going to be honored appropriately. And I invite all of you and any of your friends to come to that. Only until they've been honored can we even consider moving past that. On Friday, we're going to talk about healing the wound. On Sunday, we're going to talk about hope for tomorrow. But things do need to happen, and I want you to know, nobody's asking you to go there yet. And quite honestly, none of us have the right to ask you to go there, ever. What happened to you is wrong and cannot be made right. And we're going to ask an awful lot of you that you would consider forgiving and that you would consider moving forward. No one's going to tell you to. But we are going to make things as right as they can be made 100 years too late. We're going to pray, because that's the only thing to do right now. Jesus said this, where 2 or 3 agree about anything, it will be done. We've heard what happens when people agree about being evil. We're capable of doing the unspeakable. But here's what I would like for us to agree about in prayer. I read these words at the Ocoee History Museum. They were written in a letter by Annie Hammeter. She and her family survived the nights. They lived in South Ocoee. They survived what we know as the Ocoee Massacre. And on November 28th, 1920, 25 days after watching her city burn, but her house did not, she wrote a letter recalling these events to a family member. And she concluded with this, and this is going to be my prayer for us. She concluded by writing, "I don't know the first step to take. However, I am trusting in the Lord for his goodness." God, I'd have loved to meet that woman. I don't know the first step to take, but I am trusting in the Lord for his goodness. Family of descendants, let me pray. I don't know the first steps to ease your pain, but it is my prayer, and I am going to trust that what she asked of God 100 years ago would be fulfilled in your lifetime. That somehow, some way, through the best of our efforts, you would see and experience the goodness of God. And may generation after generation of your family lines experience the goodness of God. May the residents of this great city experience the goodness of God. May our commissioners, may our mayor, may present and future elected officials experience the goodness of God. And as we close, I simply say, God, we trust you. We may not know the first step. We may not know the next step. We might have botched the last step. But we say that we trust in the goodness of our God. Have your way in our city. Have your way in our hearts. Have your way in these commemorative moments. And God, would you please, sir, alone do what you alone can do? You reconciled men back to yourself. If you can bridge that gap, you can help us bridge smaller ones. Reconcile us to one another. Thank you for this beautiful day. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen? I would like for everybody to say, but. Oh, come on, Corey. But. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. You please stand. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we walk hand in hand someday.
We will not be afraid.
afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Help us say this last verse. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. May God bless you. God willing, we'll see you on Wednesday the 4th.
All the disenchanted crowd.